Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of The Formula. I'm your host, Trevor Carlson. On The Formula, we break down and explore the elements of achievement in world-class performers. This week's guest is Clipisode's Brian Alvey. Brian is a startup veteran out of Silicon Valley. He's been a frequent guest on Jason Calacanis' This Week in Startups. The first time I heard of Brian, I was at South by Southwest last year, and I sat in on a live podcast that featured Jason and Brian giving feedback to startups as they pitched their idea and really talked about, the opportunity with investing in their company. It was really fun watching those two critique those startups. And then more recently, Brian and I actually were introduced in a startup group that we're both a member of. I requested that Brian be a guest on the show after having a quick conversation with him, and I was really glad that I did. We had a really good conversation just about the ups and downs of being a startup founder, different pieces of advice that he has for people at different points in their career. And we even used Clipisode to source some of the questions from some of our listeners that we asked Brian. So without me rambling on any further, let's get right to the show with Clipisode founder Brian Alvey. What is one piece of advice that you would have for new startup founders who are just kicking off their startup today?
That's a very open-ended question. Like, people ask you, what's the best book? Give me the best business book, right? And it's funny because I've been hit by that on stage before, and it's kind of crushing. You're like, oh, God, there's like, I can think of 99. And then you can't remember the titles, right? It's really a pain. And what I've realized is it's whatever book like fits your situation. You have a problem right now. You have a thing that's stopping you, an obstacle. You need to get around something. You need a breakthrough. No one book is going to cause that breakthrough for every single person I answer that question for. So back to your question. What's like a great piece of advice for a new startup founders? There aren't that many one size fits all, pieces of advice. Some people shouldn't be founders. You can't tell that to everybody, right? Like, quit. Just stop, right? And you can't say, and on the flip side, you can't say, persevere no matter what, keep going no matter what everybody tells you. Because really, some things shouldn't be built. Some things should not be done. Some people should not be doing the things that they're doing. But if I had to pick one, it's, I would say, play to your strengths. Because you're going to, let's say you're jumping into being an entrepreneur or working at a startup for the first time ever. You're going to have skills. You're going to have a background. You're going to have something that makes you better than other people, and it's probably not what you were hired for, right? So if you're trying to get into, project manage, building a site or an app or something like that, you have some skills from somewhere. You were, a tennis champion, or you're great at putting up with, mean people. Like, there's some skill, some superpower that you have that's probably nutty. And let's say you were, selling shoes at the mall. Probably you should get on the sales team and see about closing deals and getting sponsorships and things like that. Take that one thing that you have, that skill you have from some other arena, and lean into that the minute you get into running your own company or working in a startup, because you're going to go further if you double down on your strengths. So that's what I would say. I would say find that one thing that you're special at and really play it up, and you can backfill the other stuff later on. So that's maybe the most universal thing I could say.
Man, there's a lot of good stuff in there. Like one question I have from something you said earlier was, you said maybe some people shouldn't be founders. How do you? I want to say, how do you know if you should be a founder or not? But I don't know if a lot of people that are considering being founders maybe have. I don't know if I would have had that level of self-awareness when I started my first business.
Right.
But how?
There's no good. You can't tell. There's no good answer. It's like, how can you tell what's going to be like $1 billion business? And until it's sold for $1 billion, you just don't know. The guys who built Fab have created like $1 billion businesses multiple times to see them like implode to be $15 million businesses, right? So you got to wait until the money's in the bank, and then if you could do it, right? It's like I don't know. There aren't that many things that you can walk into going, I know I can beat everybody in the world and get this gold medal at this Olympics. right? It's very hard to say that. So until you've done it, nobody should tell you you can't try. You should try, but it's a really tough question. So that's, like, I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's kind of unanswerable, right? How can you, like, this is what in angel investing they talk about this all the time, which is every billion-dollar idea, every amazing new thing that changes the world looks stupid and crazy, and that's why the Innovator's Dilemma book exists, which is all those stupid things that end up eating, Nokia's business, right, and putting BlackBerry out of business, right, the iPhone. It's like, it's preposterous at the time. Like, it can't be done. I mean, there were people, and it's one of my favorite stories ever, is there were people like cheering when the iPhone was announced because they thought Steve Jobs is going to jail. There's just no way this thing he announced. And this is a guy sitting on a, multi-$100 billion company or whatever, right? Or, or it's going to be a multi-$100 billion company. And, maybe the first one to $1 trillion. And they were like, wow, the guy just got up and lied. He's going to be carried away in handcuffs in like half a year when they don't actually produce this thing, because it's impossible to make a full touchscreen the size of your hand that lasts all day long, because you can't fit a battery in there. And then the joke was, it's just a giant battery with a small touchscreen on it. And they did build it, and nobody ever thought about doing it that way. So, who are you to say that, every single thing that sounds like it's completely stupid is every startup, right? On day one, they all sound just completely stupid. Otherwise, IBM would have done this already. Microsoft would have done this already. Facebook would be doing this. So you have to come up with that thing. And at the beginning, you cannot distinguish the winners from the losers, the completely stupid things from the completely amazing things. And you don't know until the history has been written. So, I just look at it like, I will never tell somebody else that they shouldn't be a founder, that they shouldn't start their own company. I will never begrudge them that. It's very funny. I have these really good friends in New York. They work at a giant media company, and they're like super talented, creative people. And their admin, their assistant, left. Like, I was writing her. I'm like, hey, I want to meet with my buddies. Like, can we schedule some time? And I get a thing back, she's gone, not at the company anymore. And I asked them, and they were like, we love her, but she had this idea, and she watched us execute our idea. Who are we to tell her she can't go off and do that she can't go off and start her own company? Like, more power to her, Like, it's really hard for people to do this. So when they do it, you can't say, no, stay and keep doing my scheduling and my calendar and, helping me plan my lunches. Like,
Right.
That's just idiotic, right? Like, you can't. So let them do it. But, I don't know, man. I've seen a lot of people fail and still get funded. And I scratch my head going, really, how are they still getting funded? Like, isn't it clear these people shouldn't be doing what they're doing? And then who knows, maybe the third, fourth time, like I have friends that will always bet on people that have failed, because they figure, it's like baseball. You fail 2 times and you hit it once, okay, you're batting .333. That's like Hall of Fame level
Right.
batting average. So you got to give them that third shot. So I don't know. I begrudge no one. I'm thrilled when people are trying this. And here's the funniest thing. I would tell you the things that I thought were completely dumb in terms of startup ideas go on to be huge. I think, not that I thought Twitter was dumb. Everybody kind of jokes about, what are you having for lunch, that kind of thing. But I'll tell you, YouTube was one where I was watching them do this thing. They literally took, what's the most expensive thing that you can do online? Serve video, right? Like, if you're running a platform, like, serving video is clearly 1,000x times, serving up little like WordPress pages or whatever, or, text and, whatever, anything else, or photos. Video is like, it's just stupid expensive.
Very expensive.
So they were spending millions of dollars a month to host the world's videos for free. So their business was, you give me this really, really giant file, or all your stuff off your cameras, and put these things online, and we'll just host them for free. Like, that was their business. Okay, it's like the dumbest thing ever. It's like just taking a truck of money to a cliff every week and just like pitchforks and shovels, and just shoveling it off the cliff,
just burning it.
Burning it, just watching it spread off into the canyon, like, not even to be retrieved. Like, nobody can go down there and get it. It's just gone. And you're like, well, that's clearly, like, would you have put 10 grand into that company in one of their early rounds? Would you have put 100 grand into that company? Like, would you have written them a check to keep, they're burning through millions a month. Would you want to be next month's couple $1 million that just goes
tough
in
call,
and just disappears? Horrible call, terrible, until they exit, and like, wow, it's genius. And then, hell, they exited too soon. They were bought for $1.6 billion, and they are arguably worth $100 billion plus inside of Google.
That's a lot. Oof.
Right? So anyway, really stupid idea. I would totally bet against them. And, there you go.
Right. So there's a couple things. Is like one, I feel like I hear a lot of people say things like, well, your idea is bad. We need to help you like make your idea better. And I'm always like, well, maybe they have a different perception of the world that you don't have that makes them like uniquely qualified to do this. Like,
right. Absolutely that. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. And then the other thing is like, I think when I was younger, I'd be like, well, I've gone back and forth on this. I mean, I'm only 29. So when I say younger, I mean like 21, 22, where it's like, okay, well, at first I was like, everybody should start a startup. It's so much fun and all this stuff. And then I was like, wait, maybe not everyone needs to start a startup. Right. Maybe less people should. And now I'm kind of like, well, I've almost like gone more towards the middle where I'm like, well, the experience that you have when you start something or try to build something new, even if it doesn't work, it changes your perception on a lot of things. Plus you develop like all these new skills and connections and all this stuff that you didn't have before.
Right. I have a friend who just said something kind of profound on Facebook, which was, if I hadn't been an entrepreneur, I wouldn't know, one, that I don't want to be an entrepreneur, and then two, what kind of company I fit in well at. So he kind of learned from his own trying and failing what he's good at, what he's not good at. He really learned a lot about himself. He's very like self-reflective, kind of like a monk these days. Right? Full of advice, right? But he failed. And but he knows like there are certain kinds of companies that he is not a fit for, and there are certain kinds of ones that he can totally understand. And going back to that thing about failing twice and then succeeding the third time, and I've a lot of angel investor friends, and they'll say like, when you shut your company down, if you tried every single thing you could try, and you're insane enough and masochistic enough to get up there a third time and try the same thing and ruin another marriage and scare away all your friends and just like physically put yourself through the ringer, right? Be lonely, be depressed, have the 3 a.m. panic attacks, run out of money, go without salary for a year. I mean, this is all the glory days of like startups, right? Mm-hmm. If you're willing to do that, I'm going to be your first check, that third company, that fourth company that you do. And if you think about it, I had a really good elementary school teacher for my kids back in New York. And a lot of the parents would complain they didn't want kids bringing video games and phones and DSs and things like that to school. And part of it was my kids are, it creates like that jealousy thing, like who has the best sneakers, who has the best, Game Boy, whatever the game was they were playing. And so that is a pain. I get that. Your kid comes home every day like, can I have the new iPhone? Can I have the new this? And so they didn't want to tell their kids no, so they wanted the school to outlaw this so they wouldn't have this problem. And he said, no, I want them to play video games. I encourage them to play video games. One, it's a social thing for a lot of kids that aren't maybe social without that. They'll sit and play games with their friends that they might not do otherwise. They don't just go up and talk to people. They don't have those skills yet, and they'll learn these skills from that. But here's the number one thing. I want them to fail. I want them to learn that just because the first time you do a math test or a placement test, you get a bad grade, that like puts you on the bad track for life. That's the way education system works. But he loved video game learning, and he loved the science behind it. And he sent me like TED Talks links and books and things. Super, super smart guy. And it was all about the fact that video game learning works more like real life learning, which is you play level 1, and really if it's too easy, you're not going to play that game again. It's kind of stupid. But if you die quickly and then you try it again and you die a little further, then you try it again and you like die, and then you try it again and you beat the level, wow, you just learned something. You learn from failure, you learn from adversity, you learn from losing, and then you overcome that stuff. If you just win all your life, you've really learned nothing. Yeah. So back to startups, right? It's that video game mentality. If I can go out, try to raise money, fail, just make it, fail again, completely fail, start again, you're going to be armed with a bunch of skills. You're going to have this awareness that you're not going to learn in a business school class, that you're not going to learn in a textbook. And you're going to learn from real life experiences and those hardships and that pain in your gut that hopefully turns back into a fire to keep you going the next time.
Yeah, I never thought about startups as a video game before, but now that you mention it, there is a lot of that, because it's like even on a daily basis, you have like little obstacles or little things that you have to overcome. And the first couple times they pop up, you're like, oh my God, my business is going to fail tomorrow if I don't fix this thing. But then after it's come up a few times, you're like, oh, this is just normal. This is my job, actually, is to solve these problems.
Yeah, and so the biggest trait, is resiliency. And people will talk about looking for people who are resilient, people who can deal with that failure. And, when I said before that there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of loneliness in starting a company, it's a real thing, because you're going through this thing that I get it, startups are big right now, and Shark Tank and angel investing and, all these things, right? Like startup culture, right? It's everybody's talking about valuations and, term sheets and whatever.
And a lot of jargon.
Tons of jargon, right? There's tons of jargon. But it's not like 95% of the people on earth have started a startup. It's got to be less than 5%. It's not a lot of people, right? It's a small percentage of people. So it's an interesting job because it's so poorly defined, and then it's also a very lonely job because you just can't tell everybody what you're going through. And so I know, one of the questions you get asked all the time and stuff like this is like, what's your biggest failure? What'd you learn from it? Like, really, I had like 9 failures today. I don't remember the last time I had a win. And you got to keep a brave face, right? It's pretty crazy. So I fail at things all the time. I completely understand those kids who do an Instagram post, or not, probably more Instagram than anything, where they put something up, and if it didn't get like 10 likes in the first few minutes, they delete it. They take it back down. They rework it. They put in different hashtags. Then they put it up again, and they wait until it gets like those 30, 40, 50, and it like catches fire, right? I understand like that, putting yourself out there, and I can't tell you how many emails I send to get like one thing, and it looks like, oh, you signed up this advisor, this person's using your product now, oh, you get these investors. You just spend your day winning, don't you? Like, you only see the part where I spend my day winning. I don't really talk about the 90% of the time where I'm getting myself kicked and not winning. And it goes back to that whole Facebook thing. Everybody sits there lamenting about somebody else's Facebook and Instagram because they're comparing their reality, their horrible day, to somebody else's best possible photo out of 30 that they took while things were on fire and their kids are screaming or whatever, and it looks like they have their stuff together, but they don't. So don't compare your reality to somebody else's fake reality, or the best
right.
shot. It's a tough thing.
How do you keep going, or how do you stay resilient when like you were talking about the video game, as you are, I'm just going to use it as an analogy moving forward because it seems to make a lot of sense. So you're in the middle of the game or the startup, and you're constantly running into obstacles, and you're not making progress at that moment in time. How do you keep going, or how do you know when you should keep going?
Yeah, so it's like that little dopamine thing, right? Where the reason you put that Instagram picture up is every time you get a like, you get an alert on your phone. You're like, oh, somebody liked my picture, or oh, that brand that I mentioned, or that celebrity I mentioned actually liked the thing that I said about them. How cool is that, right? And you just need a little bit to keep you going. So having a good support system, having a family and a wife that are always like, you're going to make it. This is going to be big. Watching other people win. So, working on a social video startup while watching Musical.ly, which I didn't really think was going anywhere. I know a lot of people who were into it and like not into it anymore. Kind of like the same way a lot of people were in a Snapchat and they're not anymore. So you think, oh, that's a ghost town now. And then they sell for $1 billion. And you're like, oh, okay, good. I can keep going, right? You take it where you can get it. You take those little sparks, and you just take those little dopamine hits and those little signs that, maybe it's not all for nothing, and you just roll with it. You have, for those 20 emails I send out, I'm telling you, like, it seems like I just spend days meeting with like TV stars and rock star investors and, talented people, and like, I'm on Twitter all the time, and like, it just must be great. And you don't see the 19, ghosts that I get, like non-replies, like nothing at all. Like, you pour your heart out to an email and you try to keep it concise and you reach out. And then I reach out to this like one voice actor, and he writes me back, and we have like a 2-hour dinner, and I'm like, oh, it's the 1 in 20. It looks like my average is better than that, but it's not. And you got to hold on to those ones that work. You go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I had the person, And I also believe a lot in, like, I don't know what the right word for it is, like kismet or fate or whatever, but like when I'm trying to hire somebody for a role, I know that I'm missing out on people who maybe aren't open to the opportunity right now, but I don't worry about that. I just worry about, out of the pool that's there right now, what was the right thing to come along? Same thing with investors. Yeah, I get told no all day long. I get told hundreds more no's, or hundreds of times more no's than yeses, right? But the yeses are some of the most famous investors ever, and I feel really good. Like, that helps. But it took 99. And people talk like 9 no's to get a yes. It feels like 99 no's to get a yes. So you just take it where you get it, and you hold on to what you can, and then you just don't stop. Like, you don't know which email is going to be the breakthrough. I think the guy who started Box, no, it was, so I don't think it was Aaron Levy who did Box. Oh, it was the Evernote guy, Phil. He was like struggling with his service. People weren't really using it or whatever. And then finally he gets this one note from this one customer, like late at night, asking a question about something. And the guy turned out to be an investor too, and then invests in his company. And like, he just had to keep going and wait for that little, light at the end of the tunnel. And then from there, it caught fire. He built a giant company. He was really successful. But man, you got to just keep waiting for that thing. And I don't know how to tell you when to stop, because I'm, I don't know. I do understand that some investors will actually take it as a sign that there's something wrong with you if you won't stop working on an idea that's clearly a loser. But I don't know how you define what clearly a loser is.
That's tough, because it's I've been on both sides of that table where things are clearly not going well, but you're like, man, am I just in the dip right now when I'm just so
Right.
close to getting out of it, or am I just drinking my own Kool-Aid?
Right.
And
Yeah,
it's
really tough. And there is no difference while you're doing it. Whichever one you're doing, there's no difference between the daily routines of drinking your own Kool-Aid when you're totally wrong and going off a cliff, and drinking your own Kool-Aid when you need that to keep yourself going to have your $1 billion exit, or whatever it's going to be.
yeah, and maybe it could just be that means you need to be much more careful about the things that you get involved in, because if you're the type of person that's gonna like, you're the type of captain that's gonna go down with your ship, maybe you need to be very selective on the types of startups you get involved with.
No, absolutely. So there are definitely ways to optimize, and and watching a lot of angel investors do what they do, there are ways that they weed out things that are, probably not going to work. So, for a long time, angel investing was, you sketch out something on a napkin at a coffee shop, and the angel investor's like, yeah, here's some money, go build that, right? And then nowadays, angel investors are like, I'm not going to write those checks anymore. I know that the odds of, if I meet 100 people who do napkin sketches and they have a great idea and they just need a team to build it, and they just need my check to be the thing that gets them to quit their job or work on this at nights and weekends or whatever, like stop going to bowling or whatever it is they do, and watching Game of Thrones, and like they do this instead, right? If my check is the difference between that, I'm pretty sure like I'm never going to find the winners in that pool. So let me move upstream a little bit. And let's say I don't meet with the napkin sketch people anymore, and I only meet with the founder once she's built something, he's built something, right? And they've got something they can show me. Now I'm only looking at the stripe of people who have proven to me that they can build something, and that they can build something without my check. Well, that's a great sign. Like, let's look at that cohort, right? And only now invest into that camp. Then once you're doing that for a while, the smart thing to do is move upstream again and say, that's great. That's amazing that you can build something. Lots of people can build things. I can build an app. You can build an app. I can build a, payment service. You can build a payment service. Like, there's all these APIs, right? You can in a hackathon, you can build like nearly any startup that exists right now, given 48 hours and a bunch of libraries and APIs. Like, you can kind of build Pinterest or, like whatever you want to build, right? So, okay, great. Now let's move upstream a little bit more. Let's find somebody who can convince somebody to leave their job before they have funding. Let's find somebody who is smart enough to partner up with a sales co-founder instead of just a tech co-founder. And everybody wants a tech co-founder, and I want to see somebody who will partner with a sales co-founder, somebody who has a Rolodex of 100 businesses who bought a product like this before, who is going to open the door to revenue and take them down the path to sustainability, to profitability. Like, how about that? So you get to be kind of more selective at looking at that. So there are ways to, if you look back, you say, well, wait, what if one of those napkin sketch founders had actually invented the next, Twitter or Apple or who knows what, Tesla, right? Something. Well, that's probably true, but I have friends who invented Seamless, the food delivery service, and and we just make fun of them. We're like, yeah, I get it, you invented Seamless, but you didn't build it, they did, and your idea is worth nothing, and the napkin sketch is worth nothing, and who didn't sit in their office at 9 o'clock at night in New York City and go, God, I wish there was a way where I could just go to a website and just order food, but not always from the same damn thing that I have every night, but like, let me get something that's like, I don't know, let's get Mexican tonight, or let's go get this fresh place across the street or whatever, right? Thai food. That doesn't mean it's like the line in the Facebook movie. Like, if you had invented Facebook, you would have invented Facebook, right? Same thing. If you had invented Seamless, you would have invented Seamless. So the napkin sketch people, like, I have no problem ruling out those 100 founders and saying, nope, don't even want to talk to you about it. Like, or I'll talk to you about it, but I'm certainly not going to write you a check. I'm certainly not going to waste an hour with you for a napkin sketch. Are you kidding me, right? So there are ways to maybe eliminate a lot of the people who will become your perpetual, I just need another check so I can build the rest of my prototype, right? Yeah. And I need another check because it ran out. And here's the reason why, like excuses. Like, you don't want to be stuck in that. You want to be stuck in the people who actually have a couple customers and need your help more upstream. So I don't know how we got on angel investing.
No, it's good. And which it actually kind of segues into another question I wanted to ask you, which was, let's say you're one of the napkin guys, right? You have your idea and you want to like turn it into an actual startup. If you were to start something brand new today with your idea on a napkin, how would you get started?
So, and I mean, I'd love to say, like, well, it depends on what the idea is, but let's say it's, the thing I'm doing now or whatever. It also depends on your life situation, right? If you've just exited your last business and you were a founder and you're sitting on a big pile of money, you're in a different situation than somebody who is still paying off a student loan and, is working at a company and in a major city where rent is really expensive, right? And it's a little harder, or it just comes from a different life experience, right? So it kind of depends on where you're starting, what you're able to do. I mean, the not the joke, but like the thing is, like, if Ev Williams or Mark Pincus or one of these people comes to you and they say, hey, I've got an idea, for their napkin sketch, you write the check, right? The people who built Zynga and, Medium and Twitter and all these things, right? Like, they're probably, or Elon Musk, right? He goes, I have a napkin sketch for another rocket company or to build tunnels. You're like, great, here's my check. I know I'm going to see that money again, and a lot of its friends. Like, that money is going to come back in a giant money party, and it's going to be cool. So that's a different case, right? So it depends on your life experience, where you're coming from. But after qualifying that, so when you're going to start something, what you're always doing is, when like Jackie Chan would be in an alleyway and he would have to get to the top of the building,
yep.
Like jump to one wall and then go up the fire escape, and then you do like a pull up and a flip, and then you jump back to the other wall, and you're like kind of halfway or in a corner between two buildings, right? And you're just like doing this weird little zigzag dance up the thing. That's all this is. You have to fake it on one side and show that you kind of have enough of a product for a great demo to then go over and win some investor money. And then once you do that, you have to take that on that side and like ride that up a little bit and go back and tell your team, like, we got this money, come join me, right? And then you have to go back now and build and show enough that you can impress them to like get the next little round of funding. So you have this weird sort of, and then you go to the customers and you say, hey, I have this thing, it does this amazing stuff. I have a thousands of dollars solution that solves $1 million problem. And you have to convince them, does your thousands of dollars solution exist yet? Does it do everything you say it's going to do? Is it perfect? Does it scale? If they actually threw 60 million visitors at it, will it work? Oh my God, of course not. It's a ghost town. Don't open that door. Don't open that door. It's just painted on buildings. It looks like buildings. It's not real. So you have to kind of, fake it in every area. But if you do it right, you end up with that weird effect. What is it they say? You can trade a paperclip for a Maserati or something, right? That thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly
what
you're talking
about. A challenge. It's like a fraternity challenge. Where take the paperclip, go out, trade it for an orange. Find somebody who wants that orange and trade it for like, I don't know, an old glove, and then like a thing, and then a coat, and then an iPhone, and then pretty soon you've traded a paperclip for a Maserati. So that Jackie Channing your way up the alley to the top of the building, at some point you're this guy who, like, it looks like I just jumped to the top of a building. Well, you didn't. You kind of jumped from side to side and faked it, and you parkoured your way up the side, and now you're standing on top. Doesn't matter. You're on top of the building. You win. So it's the whole thing. And to answer your question about startups, which is funny, like starting out again, you just have to pick which area you can make the progress in before you can flip that into the next area to make progress over there. And just, keep that in mind as you ride it up. It's all about, like the second you get funding, you're actually in the hole. Like now
Right.
you have to prove that you've got a company that's worth that valuation they give you. It's total. I guarantee you, it's not. The day that they fund you, it's hopes and dreams, right? Like you're not worth that thing that you got. Now you have to grow into it and then some. Then you have to go back and get more funding, and it's all negotiations, and it's trading a paperclip for Maserati.
Absolutely. That's a great analogy. What are your thoughts on like customer discovery and doing pre-sales in the early stages? Because I've heard how you just kind of described it. I've heard different versions of that. And another thing I've heard really hammered home recently is like that lean startup, pre-sales, customer discovery from day one.
Yeah. So so many good quotes and all that stuff. Like no business plan survives first contact with customers, right? Like
Right.
all these like so the good thing is go talk to customers as soon as possible. And the thing that I'm doing right now, it's a pivot out of another business. It's like not messy, but it's never fun when you do that and you have like the old investors that bet on one for you to do one thing, and now you're doing something completely different. So now you don't know which ones really believe in you, and especially because I have like an AngelList syndicate. Like I literally have like the 70 or 80 investors that are supposed to be your first customers who didn't invest in the thing you're doing now. So they just don't care. Like they just don't get it. They don't care. They didn't ask to be along for this. But if I make them money, they're going to be thrilled, right? Let me see. So let ask the question again because I kind of went down a path there with my own
You're
thing
fine.
here.
You're fine. It was what are your thoughts on like customer discovery and doing
Right.
pre-sales
Okay.
very early stages of a startup?
Perfect. So what I ended up doing was it looks like I've worked on an app for like 18 months without releasing it. And that's kind of true. It's really weird, right? I just put an app in the App Store like 5 weeks ago now. But it looks like, spent a year and a half working on it, which really is horrifying. Who work, like that's anti-lean startup, right? Lean startup is like, get it out there, show it, ship it, right? Fail. Don't be like Microsoft and take a year to build Microsoft, Word 6 when you had Word 5 in the market, right? They took a year or two in between things, or these long, cycles of product releases. And so it feels like I did that. But on the bright side, oh my gosh, I've had hundreds of conversations in that year and a half. I've had agencies and brands steer me in a direction and just pull me along with their needs, sort of like needs discovery and things like that, right? And telling me what it is they need, and telling me when I showed them a product that can kind of make videos with other people. What do you think of this? They said, oh, this solves our influencer problem where we have takeovers. The takeover model is broken. And I'm like, oh, thanks for telling me what my business is. Like I just didn't know. I knew I had a product for doing something, but I didn't know until I talked to them. So I've talked to them every step of the way. Same thing with investors. Same thing with like the talent, the creative people who will use the product, right? So I've just been soaking up these conversations, and it feels like I just kind of spend my day talking to people, emailing people, visiting people in different cities, not really building the product enough, certainly not selling, not raising money. What the heck? What's wrong with me? But I can tell you that in the last 3 months, the case for what it is we're doing, like what is our reason for being, is so much more laser focused than it was in the 3 months before that, which was a million times better than the 6 months before that. So you've got to talk to customers. That's part of that dopamine hit we talked about before, right? The validation. It's when I went into, I'll hide all the names and stuff, but I went into a media company a couple weeks ago and showed them, what we're doing. And it's like a, video app for making a Clipisode, right? For making shows with other people. And you and I did a test one, and hopefully it was fun and easy, and all
Oh
that.
yeah, it was totally fun.
Cool. So I showed it to them, and then I'm like, I don't really know if they got it. I don't really know if they cared. And it's that same like, the middle schooler going, oh, nobody liked my Instagram post. I feel like a loser, right? You put yourself out there, and then there's crickets, right? Nobody cares, and you feel like I have that feeling all day long. I totally get why those kids delete their stuff and repost their stuff and tweak their stuff. But the next day I get some texts from them, and I'm watching. We can see the activity. We know they're adding videos and trying to make shows together and stuff. And the only texts I get are, "Hey, this part here is confusing. this invitation thing, we did it this way. I get why it happens. We just didn't understand it when we did it. A little bit confused. Can you answer this question and this question? And how do we do such and such? Because I was clicking this button and I don't know how to delete the thing. I was hitting delete and it was just deleting the clip, not the whole episode. Whatever. So I'm texting them back and I'm like, oh God, they probably score me like a D minus, D plus if they're feeling generous. Like, this is just not, like, I kind of want these people to use my stuff. I want them to be one of our first paying customers. I kind of need this deal. Like, please, like, they're one of the ones like that was warm enough, like that knows me best. And if I can't win with them, oh my God, what am I even doing this, right? So you're questioning yourself the whole day. And I went into these other meetings and then we kind of played like text tag and I come out and I finally get on a call with the person at this company. And I was like, yeah, those things you asked, like, we're already solving one. I'm only one person working with this guy, Max, who I love in Kansas. And like, Max is already solving the first thing. We're already thinking about adding the second one, but we'll speed it up because it's a problem you're having. Like you're kind of hustling and like, it's that thing, right? Don't open that door in the ghost town because the whole building's going to fall over and there's no store behind it. It's just painted on, it says general store. Don't actually expect to get a soda, right? Not going to happen. So I'm like, kind of in this like defensive, like, I don't know, trying to accommodate kind of mode. And he's like, no, you don't understand. Those are my only two complaints. And I get it. You're going to solve them. You've done this stuff in the past. And he starts going off on how he spent the whole day making talk shows with the people he works with. And he didn't interact with them like in Slack or an email or on phone calls. He would like beam them, like ask them a question via my app and get feedback via my app. And they're building little shows and they'd show them the show that they made afterwards. And I was like, are you kidding me? He's like, no, oh my God. It's like a magic wand of storytelling. Like this is literally what he said, because I typed it while he was saying it. Because like, you need that little sign of positivity, right? It makes you like a talk show host, but smarter. It's kind of like you can go back in time and you can do all these other things and you can show up at the next time you jump into the show armed with knowledge, having read something on Wikipedia or watched a YouTube video, and you come in looking like a genius. So it's not even like a talk show host, like you and me right now on the podcast. If I mention some crazy band that's like, I don't know, a ska band in Paraguay, and you're like, I didn't even know they had ska in Paraguay, right? If you were doing it in my app, you could actually come back the next time we're talking and go, wow, I actually watched 6 of their videos. Like, I have a favorite song by them now. I'm actually a Paraguayan ska band fan now.
Enthusiast.
Right. I'm an enthusiast, right? I mean, and an expert. Like, who else in your town knows about ska in Paraguay, right? So he came back with this glowing review and like totally loves it. Fix a couple of the rough edges. I was like, oh my God, that's more like an A minus B plus review, maybe even an A. Like, as a founder, you see two big things that are negative. You see all the failures. You see all the emails that somebody doesn't get back to you until 2 weeks later they go, oh, I just didn't see this, and they totally get back to you, and you get a check from them, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that worked out. So you see all the failures. And the other thing too is you have this road ahead of you, the next 5 years, and you know that you have 5 years of stuff you want to build. You know everything in your product that's missing. When you look at your product, you do not see something small and streamlined and powerful. You see something broken and ugly and embarrassing that's missing all the things that you know need to be in there. And it is very hard as a founder to not look at your product. And I think about this again with Steve Jobs. I think about him announcing the iPhone 1 up on stage. And I think about him getting up there and in the limo on the way to do the announcement, he's already playing with an iPhone 3 or whatever, right? And he's got to get up there, whatever, all the prototypes and all the stuff, right? And he's got to get up there on stage and look at this ugly thing that he knows is missing, like all the stuff they've dreamed up for the next 10 iPhones, and get up there and pretend it's the coolest thing in the world. And it's a very hard thing to do. Take your ugly, broken, 10% completed failure of a product that totally doesn't have any of the things you know that need to be in there, and get up there with a smile and tell people, this is the coolest thing you're ever going to see, and you need to give me money for this. And I don't mean a little bit of money. I mean twice as much as you thought you'd ever pay for something like this. And have them like applaud and go for it, and like you're like, and you leave the stage going, oh my God, I totally fooled them, right? Like you're like
Right.
You wipe your brow, you're like, oh, they didn't see through the lies, they didn't see through the facade, the mask that I'm wearing, like I really fooled them. Now I've got to go back and build all the other stuff that I'm thinking about. It's a really tough thing to keep that sort of positive attitude and keep it going. And I don't know why this is like the therapy podcast,
Right.
but it kind of is the place we're going. Maybe it's where I'm feeling, but it's a funny thing. So again, I don't know what question you answered, but we came back to failure and misery and putting on a brave face.
I think that this stuff is really important because I don't know. I haven't been doing this as long as a lot of other people have, but I've been a part of, some things that didn't go as well as I would have preferred, or failures as other people call them.
You learned. That's awesome.
Yeah, I learned at a very long time ago. 8 years ago maybe. Okay. I had several food carts in different cities, and first company didn't really know what I was doing, and we failed hard. Like we were making money. We're like, we have enough to buy another food cart. Instead of maybe making this operation we have running better, let's open another one. And so it ended pretty rough. And I felt like in that moment, I had me and my business partners had two choices. It was either, be mad at each other, blame somebody, blame something else. It's the weather, it's the economy, it's I don't know, the president, whoever. And, or you could say like, okay, well, things didn't go exactly how I wanted them to go here. What could I have done differently? What could I have done better? What situations? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
If you can go back in time to that decision to invest more in the one food truck or get the second or third or, the fleet and try to expand, would you do that differently, knowing that it might still not work out, that you might have never taken the chance to go to a second city, a second location, a second truck, a second type of food, right? Versus staying with the first one, maybe having a cute little business that never got big. Because I guarantee you, if McDonald's only had one restaurant ever, you'd never have heard of them.
Right.
They only succeeded because they branched out and franchised. I mean, I know there's a whole complexity to the story.
Yeah.
But let's do that. You go back in time, and you get to appear, and you're like, Trevor of the past. It's me, Trevor from the future. Here's what I think you should do. What do you tell that Trevor?
Well, I would go back a step further than even expanding. I would say that when we were negotiating our partnership, I in my gut I was like, this is a bad idea. I'm seeing red flags pop up, but then I second guessed myself because I said, you know what? I'm not a business person. I don't actually understand really well how these things work. So I'm just gonna go with these guys because they seem to know more than I do about this.
Would you have chosen a different, let's say, allocation of shares in terms of 50-50, 25-25, or was it about that, or was it the people you're in business with? I have some advice for you on how you should do that, but that may help or may not. But what would you have done differently in that partnership? And you don't have to name names, but obviously we know who these losers are. But go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have just either gone into the business alone or not partnered up with those guys. I don't mean that they're bad people. It was just that we had different goals out of the business and they didn't line up together. And because of that, it caused a lot of conflict and maybe some bad decisions. Plus my inexperience played somewhat of a role in, I'm like, well, these guys have done it before. So even though I feel like that maybe this isn't the best choice, I'm just going to I'll just go with them because they're the experts, not me. So that was a tough lesson to learn, though. It's just like, okay, maybe when your intuition or you're kind of not feeling too good about something, maybe best case scenario is like take a step back and ask yourself why that's the case.
So back then, were these people that you would have gone away for the weekend camping with, or gone out on some kind of a family vacation or a trip with? And would you think that those are the kinds of people that you were getting in business with then?
I think at the beginning I would have gone on a trip with them. But based on like the path that we went on in the business, I think that I would have found the same things that popped up in the business partnership as an issue on the camping trip, right? Like one partner was extremely forgetful, like, I forgot to do that, I forgot to do this, or just not responsible. Maybe is the right word. And then the other one would just kind of like disappear for periods of time. Like, I know I was supposed to do the books, but I got distracted with other life stuff and I let the books slide for like 2 months.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting. And so one thing, I mean, I've seen a lot of advice on this too, which is,
Mm-hmm.
if you're partnering up with another person, never 50-50, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the funny thing is the biggest success I've had to date before this was a 50-50 partnership. So like, it's not a universal thing. Like, thank God that was 50-50. But in general, you have to have that like deciding vote kind of thing. And not that 51-49 is really better, but
Mm-hmm.
just having somebody, it's a good thing to do, actually, to kind of look around the room when you have 4 or 5 people who want to start a business together and go, look, if one of us had to start this and hire the rest of the people, knowing that in year 2 and year 3, the person who got us from there to here was not the person who was going to get us in that next phase, right? Who was going to do the sales or do the product or do the whatever it is, right? Or be CEO or be CFO, be whatever they're going to be. It's an interesting thing to see if those 5 people can agree on who should really be the owner and who should be vesting into their shares, and that there should be outs, or even a 50-50 partnership, ways to buy each other out. And there are different techniques, like there's one thing where you can set it up so that you can pull a trigger and you get to make an offer to buy the business, but one person sets the value and the other person decides who goes and who stays. And this is a really clever thing, which is, if I decide that I think our business that you and I just did, this food truck, we think it's $1 million food truck, so I will offer you $500,000 to buy you out. Now, that means I have to have $500,000 or have some financing lined up that believes it's $1 million business that would give me $500,000 to back me up on that. But at the same time, I have to hand that decision to you, and you get the choice of whether to take the money or whether to stay and pay the money, right? So there's really weird triggers, and there's all these little like game theory type things that you can do. But it's kind of a funny thing, because if you set the price too high and they call you on it, you don't have the money and the business isn't worth it. If you set the price too low, they're just going to pay you and you're gone. And you were kind of hoping to stay, right? So it's an interesting thing to try to figure out who really counts as the owner in a business. Who
Mm-hmm.
really is the founder? Who should be able to hire and fire the other people when you have 5 co-founders? It's really, really messy.
Yeah, I really like that those 2 triggers you just said, though, because it almost guarantees that it has to be a fair deal, right?
Right. It's like the Solomon like cutting the baby in half kind of story. It's one of those things, right? Like, it's kind of painful and weird, but if you're kind of both in on it, and you can't really screw the other person over. You kind of have to do what's right for the business, I think. So.
That'd be an interesting situation to watch play out.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to be involved with it, but that would be interesting
No,
to
they're
see.
usually messy, like all the Uber stuff where they're, like all these things of like who gets to stay and who wants power versus money versus shares versus, whatever controls, who wants to stay, who's going to stay to the end, even if it's not right for the business, who's going to leave, it's at the extreme end, when there's great success, it can often be worse than if there's great failure, because really, when it's a failure of a business, we're fighting over what percentage I have of 0 versus what percentage you have of 0, or hell, negative $100,000.
Right.
So, I'm cool with a less percentage of that, right? It's something that, it's like, you want to see what somebody's really like, give them power,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's that kind of thing. Take it to the extreme on the success end, and you'll see the bigger drama. So it's funny.
Right. Yeah, and I think the original thing that we were talking about was like actually learning from your experiences of running a startup. I know we've been going on all kinds of tangents, but they've been good. I've enjoyed the conversation so far.
Me too. It's always therapy.
Right, absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about what Clipisode is and how it works, because I want to talk about Clipisode before we play some of the questions that we had come in, just to give it some context on what people are hearing.
Yeah, totally. That's cool. So, my favorite thing to do is go on a podcast and say like, Clipisode is the podcast killer. It's the anti-podcast. Podcasts are terrible.
Oh no.
Which is funny. Yeah, I know. No, podcasts have their place. It's funny, and there's some great podcasters. My best friends. It's very funny. Like, some of my best friends are podcasters, right? Before you tell a podcaster joke. Anyway, so in a nutshell, it's a way to make stories, video stories with other people. And you think, okay, right? People make Snapchat stories, people make Instagram stories. People do these little 8-second, 15-second snapshots of their day, just while they're walking down the street, pull out the phone, say something really cute, put some text over it, yay. And then you're really like, okay, we're going to do this with other people. And we think it's going to be a great way for musicians and authors and creative people to engage their fans, basically take their fans and put them on stage with them, put them on a talk show with them, and ask their fans, if you're J.K. Rowling, hey, what's your favorite, what one death in the Harry Potter series would you like me to roll back if I could go back and take that out, and you're going to get some people replying, right? And so she can now make these 5, 6, 10-minute video shows with her fans where they're just submitting questions or submitting answers to her questions or submitting content, and she's including it in her show. So she can now make 30 minutes, 3 10-minute video shows a week, and it doesn't even take her 30 minutes, right? In what universe does anybody make 30 good-looking minutes of video content where it doesn't take them 6 hours, right? That's your sort of podcasting, right? There's a prep time, all the stuff that goes in. Then you do the show. Then you do the production afterwards. Like, you can spend a whole day making a 1-hour podcast. And then you kind of worry about, like, how much of that gets seen. Well, a 10-minute video, they're probably going to watch it all the way through if they're Harry Potter fans. An hour-long podcast, they're going to watch it if they care about the guest or the content or the host, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a different thing. There's a very famous online interview show for a big media brand, and it's 30 minutes long, and their average viewing time is 4.5 minutes. And they sell ads against it, and they consider it to be a big success. And I just think if you have a 30-minute video show and people are watching 4.5 minutes, that's a failure. And why don't you just make a 4.5-minute video show? So Clipisode is a way to make videos with other people that's really easy. And like 36 companies have tried this before, including Facebook, and they all went about it the wrong way, and they all failed. All of them, including Facebook, failed at this, shut down their little app that it was called Riff. But there's a bunch of other ways for making like videos with friends, right? I'm not the first person to think about this, but we're the first ones to do it in a radically different way. And the two big radically different ways are only the host needs the app. So instead of telling everybody, go download the Riff app, and we can all make Ice Bucket Challenge videos together, which was when Riff came out. It was around the time of the Ice Bucket Challenge. Nobody's going to download your app. Like, your friends aren't going to download your app. If you are Bono and all the U2 fans around the world want to submit a video question to you and be on your show, the second Bono says go download either the U2 app or the Riff app or Jump Cam or Weave or all these stupid named apps, you're like, sorry, Bono, I would have your baby, but I will not download an app for you. Like, I literally would give birth to your child and just go off and live my own life and play U2 songs for them all day long.
Yeah.
But I'm not downloading an app to ask you one video question. Not going to happen. So ours works by using just a link. So you start a show, you start an episode, you ask that question, which Harry Potter death would you like me to take back in the next book if I do another book? And I'll pretend, let's retcon it, pretend it didn't happen. And then you go and you put that little video out, and you put that link, that little video, on Twitter, on Facebook, you text it to people, you email it to people, you get the content back, they just click a link and they reply from their phones. So that's kind of the magical part, is for guests. Mm-hmm. There just is no app. You just click a link anywhere. Then the second part is it's not live. So think about this podcast, right? You may ask me a question, and I go off on a tangent, and I go, oh crap, what was the question again, right? That's happened, I think, twice now. In a Clipisode, when you ask this thing, I can go and do a retake. It's just using the camera on my phone. So one, before I go to respond, because it's not live, right? On this, like tomorrow, I'm going to wake up and go, oh my God, there's this thing I answered. Like, I should have just said this. Oh, I just thought of a much better answer for your question, right? That's how it works on live TV, on podcasts, on live, Facebook Live, right? On a Clipisode, you can ask me a question, and I can go Google the answer. If the cast of Homeland says, what was your favorite moment from season 2? I think they're on like season 6 or 7 or 8 now. But if they say, what was the favorite moment on season 2? Well, if I tell them my favorite moment, but it was actually in season 3, fans are going to call me out on that. I'm going to look like an idiot. I just got up and asked the Homeland people something, or I told them something that I love about their show, and then all the other Homeland fans, all the other super fans, are calling me a moron because I told them a season 3 thing. What a dork. Well, before I answer, I can hit Google. I can go to IMDb. I can go watch videos. I can ask my friend, hey, what was your favorite moment from season 2? I can get a great answer. And if you're armed with good content when you come back in, you're going to make a great, tight, excellent, smart, accurate 4.5-minute show instead of a 30-minute one where you ramble and don't know the answers and things like that. So really, the two biggest things that we do to make these things are only the host needs the app. Everybody else magically responds from their phones with no app. And the second piece is not live. So I can Google, get a good answer, come back with great content, do a second or third take, and then submit my answer. And you end up with these just really tight, short shows where everybody looks like a genius.
I know I definitely had to take a couple retakes on a few of them I've tried.
Uh-huh.
So you brought this up a couple times, so I have to know, which Harry Potter character would you prefer J.K. Rowling rolled back the death of?
I love this question. So I've never read a Harry Potter book, and I've never watched any of the movies, and I can't even tell you who died, which is great because now you don't have to put spoiler alert on your podcast, because I'm not going to mention it. I like Game of Thrones, Harry Potter. I actually don't like Lord of the Rings, fantasy. I'm just not into it. If J.K. Rowling listens to this though and wants to try my app, like, I will go read every one of her friggin' books. I will devour those things. I will learn them inside and out, and I would love to have her using Clipisode. But I don't know. I wish I knew. I have a lot of friends who are like, waited for each book to come out and each movie, and how cool is that? But that's very funny. I have no idea.
That's awesome. That was, if you'd asked me before what I thought you were going to say, I would not have guessed that you hadn't actually read the books or watched the movies.
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
All right, you ready? You ready for some of these questions from the little Clipisode show that we put together?
Ooh, actually, the Clipisodes. Yeah, totally. So the one thing people are going to miss out on an audio podcast, is that these are all brandable. Like, that's kind of the third piece to it, right? So it's no app to download except for the host. It's not live. But then the thing that we found when I talked about brands and agencies telling us what our business should be was like, if we can put our branding on this and make it say McDonald's or the Minions movie or whatever, like, this is going to be amazing. Like, make a talk show in your hand that's got all the artwork and all the stuff done. That's really cool. So I know that you've used this. You put it out there. You didn't actually publish the episode, and you don't need to make it brandable because you're just using the audio, which is just a nifty way that we kind of didn't intend on the product being used. But man, more power to you for getting questions for your show via my video app, for your audio show.
Yeah. So what I'm actually gonna do is I didn't know if I'd be able to successfully use the clip after I publish it on the episode.
Uh-huh.
So what I'm going to do is once the episode is edited and ready to be published, I will produce the Clipisode episode, and then I'll tag all the people that have asked questions when I put it out there. Probably run ads on the video itself too. So you'll get some free Clipisode ad dollars thrown your way.
I love it. No, well, so when I talk to people about Clipisode versus podcasts, right? I do say it's kind of the cure for a lot of the problems in podcasts, or a lot of the problems in Facebook Live and Periscope, right? There are a lot of things that are not good about Facebook Live and Periscope and live video. That like the best thing that anybody ever invented for internet video is a fast forward button, and you can't use it when you're watching Facebook Live. And every Facebook Live is an hour long. Anyway, but I do think it goes hand in hand. The types of people who can do a podcast, who know lots of interesting people, are the kind of people who can do 2 Clipisodes a week, ask 10 smart friends a question about something in their industry, get back 3, 4, 5 answers. You don't need all 10.
Mm-hmm.
Make a show. Never the same guest twice. So I think it goes hand in hand and becomes kind of like a teaser trailer, like that thing that you're talking about generating. It'll point to this episode. Here's the full hour-long conversation, but here's a 3-minute warm-up. These are the kinds of questions that are going to be answered. How cool is that? So go ahead.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Hey guys, this is Andrew Vick coming from the How Factory office. Brian, my question for you is, aside from being on Trevor's podcast, what's been the biggest failure that you faced, and how did you overcome or react to that, and how has that shaped, your career moving forward? Thanks.
So it's a funny question. I mean, it's one we already touched on, right?
Yep.
Man, but how mean. I have friends like this.
They're my favorite.
Aren't they great? So I would say actually, when I talk about my career, I do say I have like multi-million-dollar successes, but I've also had like more, failures and even multi-million-dollar ones, right? Like it's a lot of ups and downs. So there's tons of failures, and I can point to failures all day long, all week long. There hasn't been one. I just think I've been lucky enough not to have one that was so catastrophic that I was, banned from the industry or never allowed to play again, right? Caught doping or whatever, like, and now I'm out.
Right.
So no, if somebody's not gonna be nice to you, I'm not gonna answer their question seriously. What's the next question?
All right.
Hey guys, this is Michael Caraway from Denver, Colorado. And recently I just read that podcasts are growing around 76% year over year. My question is, how do you see that impacting the current state of marketing? And do you think that's going to impact social media specifically?
So my first answer is 88% of all statistics are made up. And so I wouldn't put any, I don't know, that's made up too, right? So, So I don't know about the numbers of year-over-year growth, and it depends on who you're looking at, right? Is the listening time, viewing time growing? Is revenue growing? You know, I think that it definitely had a resurgence with Serial, right? I mean, I knew people who were podcasting definitely in 2004 because the content management platform that I built that Engadget ran on, it had RSS feeds, but it didn't have and so it was probably 2003 going on 2004. It didn't have the media, like the embedding, like the way to embed a podcast along as a payload with the RSS feed so that people could get the thing. So the Engadget guys had to hand edit the RSS feeds and hated me because my stupid platform back in 2004 didn't support adding podcasts to blog posts and that sort of thing and having those like the media tag on them. So it's been around for a long time. Every 3 or 4 years, it's the year of the podcast. Like they're totally here. They've totally made it. It's now a thing. And I think it's like any other business, right? It's hit driven. If you're big and successful, like there are people who I would tell, like, don't stop podcasting. You're one of the best in the world at it. You actually make money at it. And that's a rare thing, and then there's everybody else, right? Podcasting, but it's the same thing in music. You got your top 1%, making all the hits, making all the money, getting record deals. And you got 99% of the rest of the world, they're playing their asses off at clubs and house parties, house concerts, doing, birthday parties, like doing anything they can do, busking on, the boardwalk in Santa Monica, the promenade. It's really, really hard. So, is podcasting growing? Is it amazing? I'm sure it is. Yeah. Is it growing for everybody? No. And do I think it's going to change anything? I think audio itself is a strange space, I say on your audio podcast.
Right.
In that, like, what does it mean? Like after we had the idea for Clipisode and we started building it and we were nowhere near getting it ready, a year and a half ago, Anchor was announced. And Anchor was like the audio version of Clipisode. And it was like, oh, those bastards. Can't believe this. What the heck? Like, this is exactly our idea, but for audio. And then it turns out, well, no, everybody needs the app to join the shows. And you can't really curate it and kick somebody out. It's kind of like tweet responses. You can't really choose who's going to talk next after you. And then they've pivoted into this thing where like they have different channels where I'm the politics show and you're the tech show and somebody else is the car show. And, that's just how it's going to be. So I don't know. I think people try out this stuff. I think audio is interesting. What does audio mean for social media? I think Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat in particular are very visual. What does audio mean there? At the same time, I have a friend, I'm an advisor in a company called Spoken Layer, which
has
I've voice actors and robots, right, that transcribe or, reverse transcribe, right, that convert, TechCrunch blog posts or, AP stories, or I don't even know who they work with. Like, I can't even tell you the companies, but take their content. And let's say it's Huffington Post. They'll take every Huffington Post story, or Time magazine. They'll take all these stories and they'll convert them into audio. So you always have a play now and listen to this button, or save it to listen to it later, or they'll bundle up stuff and do like a 30-minute show that's all the tech sites and Wired and TechCrunch and whatever, and talking about all the stuff, or all the politics stuff. And it's a really, really cool thing, but it's weird. Audio, I mean, I can talk about audio for a long time. Audio is really fascinating because you can spend your day working in Photoshop or coding, and you can listen to music.
Yeah.
Clearly, easily. But can you listen to somebody, if it's NPR and they're talking about stuff, sure. If it's an interview, I don't know. If it's educational content, that's really hard. Like an audiobook, I can't listen to an audiobook while I code. I can't, you just can't, you got to focus on one or the other. I can listen to Spotify all day long while I code, right? So where does audio fit? Well, it fits on commutes.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to have more commuting in the future or less with the rise of Uber and self-driving cars and all these other things and hyperloops and, the boring machine tunnels and stuff, right? I don't know. I think there's more, but it's a certain type of people in a certain type of city. So a certain type of content makes sense for them. It's not, in Ohio or Missouri that they're, or maybe they are commuting for hours to go to the place where they work because they're rural. Like, maybe I've got it completely wrong. But anyway, some of the most interesting stuff I've heard about this is it's growing, but the whole internet's growing, and everything's growing, media is growing. That you think about it, and audio is amazing for blind people, and that's a really weird thing people will say about these businesses when they want to marginalize them and say that they're not worth anything. But the counter argument to that is every one of us at some point during the day, every day, is blind. So when we're driving, we cannot be reading TechCrunch blog posts. We can totally be listening to them. You know, there are cases where you can't look at your phone, where it makes sense for it to be talking to you. Audio interfaces are on the rise, right? Who am I to say this shouldn't be the next big thing? But it's not my thing. I love visual stuff and videos, but podcasts are fascinating. So that was fun talking about that. I don't really have an opinion. I said a lot.
Yeah, no, it all made sense, because as you were like about to say something, well, you could use it then or this. I'm like, oh, I was thinking along the same lines, because I was like, yeah, it's like whenever I'm doing something and I want to listen to something other than music, like I'm usually not watching it, even if it is a video, unless it's like an instructional video. I usually just listen to it. So it's it's all interesting, really, because I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a place for it, but then again, I also feel like if you're going to get into if you're going to get into anything, you should want to do it whether or not it's going to be, it's going to be successful, right? It's something that you kind of want to do anyways, or there's going to be some other benefit out of it.
Yeah, so correct, right? So I think a lot of podcasts work like that, right? This is not their primary job. Blogging was like that back in the day. You had a job and you would just blog while you're at your job, whatever your job is. Like you're a toll booth collector, like,
right?
You're just blogging on the site. You layer that money in, but it's not going to pay your mortgage unless you live in a really small town somewhere. It's not going to do that. I don't know. It's funny. I'll tell you that I don't know if I really want to admit this, but that I do listen to podcasts. I'd say like every other day. This is like a really weird story. We have a big backyard and we have 4 dogs, and they do their thing on the outside, their yard all the time. And every other day I'm out there collecting all the stuff they left me. And I just I don't really want to listen to music then. And I found there's a specific podcast, the sales podcast. It's like the advanced selling podcast. These guys, Brian and Bill. And I kind of need somebody to be talking about sales in my ear all the time. And I don't even listen to all the episodes. I listen to a couple of choice ones, like almost on loop. They're these little 10, 15-minute podcasts. So I don't commute. It's every couple of weeks I'm in San Francisco, so it's like an hour-long commute. Even then I want to listen to music. But when I'm cleaning my dog's yard work up, I listen to podcasts, but sales podcasts only. So that's a really weird, use case. I'm not blind at that point. I'm just really, really don't want to be thinking about what I'm doing. I don't want to be thinking about imagining collecting checks from customers. So there you go.
I think I think that you have something in common with a lot of people when they're trying to do something that they would prefer to be mindless, that they would be listening to something educational or something to take their mind off of it.
Totally.
All right, let's key up this next one here.
Let's say you have a content creation platform like Reddit or Product Hunt. When should you start to really look at monetizing your users?
Wow. So that's a very, very interesting thing. Because I think about this a lot, right? Like I'm purposefully not doing like pre-rolls and stuff on top of videos that people are doing. I'm kind of promising we're not going to do that, because I just don't think like 30-second ads in front of a 3-minute video makes a lot of sense, right? Like, Vine failed to monetize. Vine was 6-second videos, of course. So this is that Jackie Chan answer again, right? Like as soon as you can convince somebody that you have an audience that's worth selling to them. And, and I don't mean round up the numbers and lie. I don't mean, claim that they all, every single one of our listeners makes over $100,000 a year, right? Like don't do that. Don't flat out lie to them. But, you've got to go and work it from both sides. So go find your audience, do demographic surveys of them, right? If you have people visiting your site or people listening to your podcast, leaving a review of your podcast, make sure they leave a lot of reviews, because if you get twice as many reviews as another podcast, you'll get more advertising. Same thing on the website. So make sure you get those testimonials. Make sure that you have some people who will rave about you and say that they can't live without your site. And then the better thing is make sure that they're willing to say that, the last time I bought a, fitness equipment, it was because I saw a recommendation on this site and I loved it. And then come back and leave a little testimonial and say, yeah, that exercising ball that the last one I bought popped. This one you guys recommended didn't. That's so cool. Thanks, guys. I really, this is why I visit you guys. This is why I signed up for your newsletter. This is why I have you in my, RSS reader, whatever the heck the thing is, or follow your Twitter, or get your alerts on my phone. make sure you get those testimonials. Then take a bunch of those, right? Roll them up, put them in your hands, run across the street to people with the money and say, look, I have raving fans, but not only, because listeners, it doesn't matter, right? I've looked at businesses, actually almost acquired a business where they have these like influencers sending out these gift boxes or whatever. And the funny thing was people with, 2, 3, 4 million followers might only get 10 people signing up for their gift box. But then you get somebody else with like 20,000 followers who would get 1,000 people signing up for their gift box. So you need to be that kind of business that doesn't just have the bulk numbers, but moves the needle. That when you mention a product, when that advertiser advertises, they're going to get ROI, they're going to get some kind of, traction, some kind of great results, and you need to be that thing. And if you're building something that isn't going to be that, then you're not going to make it as an advertising driven business.
I couldn't agree more. And something you said that really reminded me of, I was listening to or watching one of, I was listening to one of Noah Kagan's videos because I don't actually watch them, but
Funny.
he was talking about email lists, and I've been all about like, how can I grow my email list as fast as possible? And I'm reading everything I can, doing as much as I can, testing out things. And then I'm listening to this video and he says something like, all right, you want like the secret to like a how to improve your email list. He's like, go purge everybody off your list that hasn't opened an email from you in the last 2 months.
Right.
And I'm like,
that's really
damn.
Really good.
He's like, those people don't care about you. He's like, you only want to reach the people that care. And he's like, you're gonna see like your open rates are gonna go up. The Gmail algorithm is going to like favor your emails more because so many people are actually opening and interacting with them.
Not right. So,
yeah.
So I'll tell you the two of the I don't know. I'd like to say they're the smartest people in media, but two of the people, let's say, they probably are. They're probably both smarter than me. But two of the people I respect the most were in really interesting positions like that, where they had something that wasn't the most popular, that wasn't the most mainstream, that wasn't a mass market audience, but they had enormous influence. And one was Rafat Ali. He started paid content a long time ago and sold that to The Guardian. And then he started this thing called Skift, which is a travel news brand. And then within like 1 year, it was like now beating, Yahoo Travel and like whatever the other travel sites were that are out there. Like it just came out of nowhere, just owned the space. Now he has the biggest conference in the space. I think it's amazing. But back when he did paid content a long time ago, they didn't have like CPM based stuff. They had a newsletter. They had they had conferences and things like that too. But they wouldn't have survived if they said, we need to be paid based on the traffic and how many impressions we're going to get your ads. How many views we're going to get seen for you, stuff like that, or even the clicks. But it was that they just had all the right people there on their site. And he's done it again with Skift, where like everybody in the industry who matters is there. They're reading it. It's the first thing that breaks all the news. It's like the biggest thing. And then the second one I'll tell you about, and this is for your media question here from this. I built the next Reddit, right? Which is awesome. More power to you. Good. Jason Hirschhorn. So he had an interesting career. He did, I think it was Slingbox. Like he worked at MTV. Like he was acquired into MTV. He just knows everybody in media. I think he's on the board of MGM. Like he's on a lot of stuff. And again, like tomorrow I'll look this all up on the internet. And I go, damn it, I wish I had said these other things. But anyway, he's super influential. For a while, he was the co-CEO of MySpace with Mike Jones. And so the two of them ran that for a bit. And he was like a New York guy in LA. Totally didn't belong. And then he left. But he always, alongside of all those other businesses he did, ran a daily newsletter, and it was called Media Redefined or Media Redef. And this newsletter would be like 15 to 40 links of just stuff that he read about the day before. So he was one of those people who would sit in a feed reader, find all the stuff, read hundreds of stories, so he can give you the 12 best ones or the 20 best ones. And it's actually, it's so good, it's annoying, because if you subscribe to his newsletter, like it's going to waste an hour of your day, because you're going to open this link. Oh, got to read this one too. Oh my God, how did I miss that? Boom, open. You open like 20, 30 new tabs, and some of these are like, the oral history of the making of the Caddyshack movie or whatever. It's like, it just goes on and on and on. You're like, damn, it's like being assigned a lot, that 3 hours of homework. Like I have a startup to run. I can't open your newsletters. But the cool thing was, back when I first met him I think he had only like 5,000 subscribers, but those 5,000 subscribers were the three, Larry and Sergey and Eric Schmidt running Google, right? And Rupert Murdoch. Okay, now Rupert Murdoch doesn't read email, but his, like, what I knew at the time, because I was actually working on a thing in his offices in his building, was like his assistant would print out that newsletter, like the Media Redefined newsletter, would get like printed out and handed to Rupert Murdoch on paper, and he would like look through it and read the stuff and go, oh, tell me more about that one, right? So he wasn't like like me opening your thing in Gmail and opening 30 new browser tabs and sitting on your laptop all day long.
Right.
He's billionaire, lots of things to do, media companies to run. But, when you can say, I only have 5,000 subscribers, somebody else has 50 or 500,000 subscribers. Yeah, but I've got all the good subscribers, right? That Noah Kagan thing you said, that makes me smile, because that's the thing. If you can say, no, I don't throw big parties, but when I do, it's like only billionaires, and celebrities and athletes and all this stuff, right? You're like, okay, well then I guess that's a better party, right? So yes, you can totally hone in, but I love that hack, that trick, and Noah Kagan's a genius. So I mean, obviously everything he's going to say is going to be really smart, like, and,
right,
off the charts, really cool. But that one about like prune your list, stop sending mail that doesn't get opened. Google sees that. Why would they treat you favorably? Send mail that gets opened. If you can go to an advertiser and say, I have a 69% open rate instead of a 6% open rate, you're a genius. Then they go, well, how many subscribers do you have? You go, well, I only have 5,000, but they're the best 5,000. They open all my stuff and they buy things when I mention them. Now, don't pay me based on CPM. Pay me based on the fact that I own, I have Larry and Sergey and, Rupert Murdoch on my thing, right? Pretty amazing. It's great advice.
Yeah, it's another friend of mine launched a course recently, and we were talking, and I was like, how many emails you got on your list? Because he was like, oh yeah, he's like, I haven't done any marketing, even though my course is on how to do online marketing. He's like, I haven't ran any ads. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, I have an email list of 300 people, and almost all of them bought.
Wow. Yeah.
Like,
so there you go. That's incredible. That's the right way to do it. That's the thing to do. Why on earth would you send stuff to people who don't read it, right? Who don't open it, who don't care, who aren't going to buy it? So back to that same thing, that business that I looked at, acquiring like one company ago, where they had people who were like with 2 million followers who couldn't get, a couple dozen people to subscribe to their sort of, box of goodies, but people with 20,000 who were an author, who had a super engaged audience, could get 1,000 to sign up. Like, that's amazing to put in a credit card and do that thing. So there's a huge difference between having a large fan base, especially if you pay for Instagram followers and Twitter followers and things like that, right? That's just a waste of time. Then your open rates and all your success, your click rates are nothing. They're terrible. Versus having a tight, small audience that really cares about what you want, and you can mobilize them and get them to do things for you and get them to spread the word for you, get them to buy your advertising products, and then rave about how good they were so you can get more advertisers. That's so good.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely take some time to do that, especially after hearing him say it and then talking about it. I'm putting that towards the top of my next time I have like an hour or two of time to dive in. I'm going to work on that.
Well, and it's counterintuitive, right? Delete half your list so that your list will grow faster.
Yeah, it's
but it works with rose bushes, right?
Yeah, it's like being willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. Like, a lot of people are all about those vanity metrics.
Yep.
But it's almost like you want to pick your audience,
sure.
Right?
Sure. I completely agree.
I had that conversation with a friend of mine who does music events. He does a great job, and he wants to make bigger and better music events. And he pitched me on this one. He was like, I want to get your thoughts on it. And it was like, some type of generic festival. No offense to him. And I'm like, okay, well, you have all these other festivals, right? They all have like a theme to them. Like, can you just pick a theme here? And he's like, well, I don't want to like rule anyone out. I'm like, well, like, do you want these types of people there? No, not really. Do you want these types of people there? No, not really. Who do you want there? Well, these are the people I want. I'm like, okay, well, why don't you make a festival for them? And just leave everyone else out. Tell them, like, if they want to come, they'll come anyways. But if they don't, then don't cater to them.
Right. So this happens in music all the time, where you see somebody get political, and then everybody's second guessing that and saying, "Oh man, why did you go there? Why did you do that?" Because you just alienated half your audience, and that may or may not be true. You alienated half of America, but you might not have alienated half of your audience, and you might actually be psyching up the audience that was right for you to go out there and fight for you and talk about you more, and maybe attracting more people from that. So by, instead of saying, like, let's say America has 300 million people, like, instead of saying, well, I just eliminated 150 million people that ever buying my next album or following me on Twitter or whatever the thing is, yeah, but that other 150 million people, there's a lot of customers in there, a lot of fans left in there. You don't have 150 million fans. Like, you have a million. Like, I think you may have just done a good thing, right? So you always have to wonder, like, was that a genius idea? But standing for something is a hell of a lot better than standing for nothing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So we have one Clipisode question left, and then I have a couple questions that I usually ask all of our guests to kind of wind down the interview.
Right. Cool.
This one's from my friend Sarah. She works for a regional newspaper, so I think it'll probably be like a media question or something. So let's see what she has to say.
Hey Brian, thanks for taking our questions. I am wondering what one piece of advice you would give to traditional publishers when they're thinking about video in particular, and these new technologies like Clipisode that give us so many more opportunities to engage with people online. Thanks.
Wow. So there's a couple questions in there, right? Mm-hmm. What advice would I give to them in general? Double down on your strengths, right? If you are a regional newspaper, your strength is local, right? Yahoo News and USA Today cannot cover your local like you can cover your local, right? That's always been your strength. They also don't know how to sell into the local businesses, right? How to feature them. They just don't have that, right? So definitely like lean into that thing. Be the champion of all your local teams. Be the champion of all your local causes. So that's just generic advice for people in those kinds of businesses. In terms of video, I mean, it's of course self-serving. Like, I think you should, use my product. We should talk about that, right? Like, I'd love to get our content info. No, because really having like honest conversations and featuring these people. So let's say your business is super local. It's one town, and you've got like the car dealer pays, and the local donut shop that isn't a chain is paying, and these different people are paying, and to sponsor things and to sponsor the school teams, and you're really tied up in that little circle. I would say making content with them, putting them up on stage, putting them into your videos, having them talk about how amazing the fair was, or the rally, or the elections, or what they think. I mean, but it doesn't even have to be like local in terms of small local market. We're talking to a very giant media company outside of the U.S. about like all their politics and sports coverage, and they are like every old media company is. They're looked at as like something that was super important and critical in the 1950s, less important in the 80s, and completely irrelevant today, right? And their mandate is, how do we get millennials involved in what we do? How do we get young people talking about these things? They're already talking about the soccer games and the politics and all these other things going on, the TV shows, and whatever these things are in this region. How do we get them talking about it with us instead of talking about it with themselves on, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these different places? So that's really the challenge, And so that's what I talk to them about, is how to be a company that does great stories and does, like one of our first customers is a delivery company that has 400,000 employees, and again was like, you'd think they're from the 1950s and they haven't changed since the 50s, and they're trying to change that mindset. And I think showing that you're good at stories and walking around, pulling out a phone, doing an 8-second clip, asking somebody something, being very casual, but still having the ability to make it very curated and very controlled, but look like off-the-cuff UGC content, friends just talking about stuff, but take out the weirdos, right?
Right.
I think that's an interesting balance, right? How do you make it look like you're young and hip, but still also keep out the crazies, and then feature your audience on stage in your content to make them go out and be ambassadors for your brand and love you to death?
I'll definitely make that connection for you. She's pretty awesome. One of the things that I thought of was, like, if they're for like local, at least based on something you said, I kind of wanted to riff on it a little, but it's like almost like you said, they can't, like, these big media companies can't do local. So I think of the things I like to read when it comes to sports or media. And was it Grantland or something like that? I think it was Bill Simmons. Whenever he'd write an article, it would just be it'd be like a very well written story or something like that. And like,
sure,
it's almost, and everything is so like quick fire today on social media, and like everybody's always like trying to run to be the first out there. But I don't see a lot of local, well, at least local here, doing like a lot of very super in-depth storytelling around those things.
So right. So that's the thing. So it doesn't just have to be that you know the space, but absolutely do the kind of media they're not doing, right? So if everybody else is doing, regurgitated stuff, AP stories formatted by AI, that spit out sports scores or whatever, go behind the scenes, talk about the coach and the star player or the one that didn't make it, or tell all those stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do the long form journalism type stuff. There's, you know for a fact there's no way on earth that a national newspaper is going to cover your stuff like that and tell it in such a way. And yeah, of course, I mean, it's a trick, but that if you get 6 quotes from people instead of 2, oh my God, 6 more people are going to buy that paper and like frame it and tell their friends about it, right? Because they were mentioned in it, right? That's the whole point of doing video shows where you never have the same 6 people on it twice, right? Every single show you get new people, you're actually tapping into each of those little mini groups to go out and promote you. That's why you do a podcast that doesn't have the same guest every time. If you had me on twice or 3 times in a row, God forbid, nobody cares the 3rd time I'm on. I'll tell you a very funny story. There was an old comic book artist, and he had never gone to any of the conventions. Never done a Comic-Con, never done the New York one, never done San Diego, never done all these things. And he'd been kind of out of the industry for 20, 30 years, whatever it was. And they convinced him to come to one of these things and like come there because people have old things they want signed. They've never met you. And he showed up, and there were just lines like out the door, wrapping around. People were talking to him, posing, taking pictures of them. All that stuff was amazing. He's like, oh my God, why did I skip this for all these years? He came back the next year, and he had really short lines. He's like, do people not love me anymore? They're like, no, there's all this pent up demand. They really, really, really wanted to meet you. They got you to autograph all their stuff. They don't have another copy of Ghost Rider or whatever the thing is for you to like autograph. So they just don't need to meet you again, right? So same thing, diminishing returns. If you had me on as a guest on your show tomorrow, the next day, not going to work. But flip it around, get a new guest each time, and I'm going to tweet the hell out of this show that we just did. And then next week I might still tweet somebody else's show, right, and promote it. But that next guest is going to do that. So the whole point is to bring the people in with you, help them, and never bring the same crowd twice. And you're going to tap into each of their audiences each time and hopefully get this lift that just compounds.
Yeah. I like that. One thing, well, this is something I'm trying. I kind of want to get your feedback on it now. But so I'm going back to some of my previous guests, the ones that I've enjoyed talking with quite a bit, or that, and they're accessible to do another episode with. And I'm bringing on several guests at once, and they're people that haven't met each other before, and just kind of like throwing us all into one episode and just going to pick a topic and see what happens. Do you think that's also a good strategy, or would you advise against it?
Well, are you thinking as a podcast or a Clipisode?
Either one, really.
So I mean, that's kind of what Clipisode was built for, right? Was to grab those kinds of people. So if you look at a conference series, usually it's 20 speakers, but it's 15 or the same as the last time. There's only 5 new ones. So I look at this as a great way to, if you have that stable of people who've been on your show, or you've done 200 podcast episodes or whatever, you have 180 guests that were on, I'm never going to have time to join every one of your shows, right? I mean, I will if you do a Clipisode because I care my business. But,
right.
But in general, like Noah Kagan, maybe on your show once, and then he'll be like, you'll send him like a couple of invitations to be on these little news roundtables, let's call them, that you're making with Clipisode or making in your podcast software. And he won't be able to join all of them, but he'll be able to join some. And I just think that the ability to jump in 15 to 20 stolen seconds in between doing 2 other really important, grueling, crappy things, but having that little break in between where I get to think of a question, I'm not going to answer it right now. I'll think about it. And I'll sleep on it, right? An hour later, the next day, whatever, I can come back and I can answer your question. You're going to get really cool answers, and you might have somebody jump in that doesn't have time to sit down for Skype with you, that doesn't have time to come into a media company studio in LA and show up to be on a little, show where you interview rap stars or whatever, but they could absolutely jump in from the back of a limo somewhere, or, in between something at the Grammys, or somebody hands them a phone and says, hey, answer this question, right? I think that's a really easy, interesting way to get content, and from a variety of guests. So that's absolutely what I built, is like that way to do these news roundtables. And so you think of, I have a friend who's friends with a lot of like famous investors and movie stars and whatever. And if he was doing a show in this, he's not going to get Elon Musk or, I don't know, Steph Curry, like some famous athlete, right, to be on his show twice a week. Not going to happen. Shaquille O'Neal, not going to do his show. But do you think once a year Elon Musk might jump into his show because it's a 15-second total commitment from clicking the link, your camera turns on, you record an answer, you're Elon Musk, so you don't need to do a second take, and you hit submit video and you're out, like you're done? Absolutely. So we're trying to make it very easy for you to get those people where that might be like a year 10 guest for your podcast.
Right.
But how do you get them? How do you get them in year 1 or in month 6? And you're not going to get Elon Musk more than once a year, but you got Elon Musk once a year, and Lady Gaga jumped in, and like these things. So that's what I'm kind of looking for, that serendipity. But I think about that all the time. How do you? And this goes back to the Jackie Chan thing, right? From like 6 hours ago when we started this, which was that whole idea of trading up. You do that with the brand equity too. So if you can get a couple of these people to be on your show, that kind of propels your show. Then you get a few more people on your show, and at some point, you actually have the Mark Maron podcast, or one of the biggest, the Tim Ferriss podcast, where now Arnold Schwarzenegger is begging to be on your show, and you don't have to beg him to be on your show, right? How do you get to that point? Well, you get to that point by getting hundreds of other people to invest a little bit of equity in you, a little bit of their, the fame equity or whatever you call it, as you make your way up to where now you are the brand, and now you have the power, and you have the audience, and you have all this stuff going, the momentum, right? So anyway, it's a funny thing, but that's exactly what I see happening.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. And I realize this has turned into a little bit of a marathon, and I'm sure that you have other stuff on your plate today. So I'll kind of move us along to the last.
What are your questions? Yeah.
Oh yeah, cool.
Excited.
All right,
I think because I've heard some stuff, so I don't know if you ask the same ones every time or what. I know some people do that, like the Proust questions or whatever.
Yeah.
Like thing like that. But no, what are yours?
Yep. So I just have usually 3 questions. It was 5 or 7 or something, but then I was like, I actually enjoy the normal conversation better than the questions at the end. So cool. The first question to wrap up the show is. Is there anything that you do on a daily basis that you feel like really gives you an edge or an advantage on your day?
I do, and it's not a work thing. It's not working. So I take my kids to school, and unless I'm out of town, and then they go to school without me. They don't skip school. But I take my kids to school, and the thing that I do is what my dad's mom, my grandmother, taught me. She's still alive. She's an amazing woman. I think like 90 something. We were just talking about her this morning actually with my daughter. She said you talk to your kids all the time, like explain things to them. So we will unpack lyrics. We will talk about all sorts of things. So with my daughter today, we were talking, there's a song that mentions you're sitting on a powder keg and burning the candle at both ends. And it's a beautiful song by Fastball. It's this really amazing, haunting, just gorgeous song. But they have these 2 phrases in the beginning. And I asked her, do you know what a powder keg is? And she's 9. And she's like, I don't know. Is it she thought it was like baby powder. I'm like, no. And I explained what a keg is, which is of course great, frat parties and stuff. But then we go through all this stuff. So anyway, talking to your kids, explaining things to your kids, and it just gives me like those teaching moments kind of fuel me. And they're just a break from working on an app and writing investors and trying to juggle, talent and getting famous people to use your product and being week 5 in the app store and waiting for that spark, that thing to catch on. And like, is it ever going to work? It's just a really nice, refreshing break, knowing that I'm investing in their lives and that I'm making them better people, and that they remember these things and they repeat them back to other people, and I can watch them grow. So I thrive for that. I would hate to give that up. I love taking my kids to school.
That's pretty awesome, man. I'm not a parent, so I can't say that I completely get it, but from what you're saying, it sounds like a very important part of your day that allows you to almost like center yourself.
Exactly, right? So it's very grounding, right? Like they have lives, they have stuff going on, they get sick, they don't get sick. Well, think about your podcast. You are giving, you are teaching, and that act of teaching means you're constantly also a student and you're constantly learning things, right? So by asking the right questions, being the person who provides the forum for that, by being the voice and the leader and educating and being a teacher, you're a perpetual student and you're constantly learning great new things and growing. So it's very similar.
Yeah. The main lesson I keep learning is how little I actually know.
Yeah. I got a physics degree in college, and like when you get to the end, like you didn't master it. You just learn like you can specialize in something and still not know anything. And there are so many people out there who know much more than you do. Yes, exactly. It's an incredibly humbling thing. I think some people get a degree and think they know everything, and I got a degree and I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be good at it. Like, I'm never going to make a difference, be an Einstein or whatever, or a Planck. It's not going to happen, right? Wow.
Yeah, and it gives you so much more respect when you do see people doing amazing things in your field. You're just like, oh my God,
Right.
how did you do that? Because
Yep.
I don't know if people realize how difficult what you just did was. So the next question I have for you is, what would be your most impactful book, or another way to phrase that would be if you had to recommend one book someone read, and it's the only book they read their entire life, what would that book be?
Okay, so their entire life. My God. So I mean, immediately when you talk about stuff, I think startup things. I think Crossing the Chasm. I think The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. That's maybe the best one in terms of all the psychology stuff that we talked about at the beginning. It's going to be hard. It's always going to be hard. If it wasn't hard, you wouldn't make any. There wouldn't be these like $1 billion payouts and stuff like that, right? Like that's a really good book. The Innovator's Dilemma. There are a lot of things that talk about these things. But man, I don't know. Like I want to go with something else, like The Alienist or Gone Girl. Like just a trashy, fun, The Time Traveler's Wife. Like I don't read a lot of fiction. I wish I read more fiction, had more time for fiction. So when I read one, it blows my mind. Like I told you, I don't read any Harry Potter stuff.
Right? Yeah.
Trying to think of like a fun book that's not a business book that I really enjoyed. The Checklist Manifesto, but that's like another good business book. Man. I don't know. I don't have an answer. So it really is like I need to meet a person and know what they need to read next, what they need to do next. So I just don't have one. It's like recommending a TV show for somebody, The
Right.
Shield was my favorite series ever. Just above everything. It was just my favorite, but it's not for everyone. And you can't say it's better than The Sopranos because it's not. It just is for me.
That's a really good point, because it depends on what your taste is, where you are in life. Because now I'm like questioning my own answer to that question, because usually my answer is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Okay, right.
But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, what if you're already going down that path, right? You're already going down the path that you're already kind of listening to your own intuition, or the way that they say it in the book, like living your own legend. You're already doing that. So, The Alchemist might not be the right book at that point in time for you.
Correct. Somebody else is going to say 100% the Bible. And somebody else is going to be like, that is absolutely not the right thing for me. If I have to pick one book, it's not that one, right? So, I don't know. Ask Oprah. I'm not the guy to recommend books. Unless you have a specific problem, and I will help you through that problem.
Yeah, just tweet at Brian Alvey with all of your book requests for your specific problem. All right, Brian. I'm really glad you took the time to show up on the Formula for this episode. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I always enjoy talking to you. You always have something. You always say something that I learn from and can take away and apply to whatever I'm doing. Thanks. So I really appreciate it.
It was a blast.
Yeah, I hope you had fun. So the last question I have for you is, what message would you leave for our audience moving forward?
I'd love to say never give up, right? Be resilient. Don't. But I mean, just I would say, wow. I mean, it's health and happiness. I mean, it's very funny because they're all this startup junk and who got funded and who didn't and what are you doing. None of those things matter if you're unable to be happy. And a lot of people hold themselves back from being happy, and health factors into that. So just stay healthy and find ways to be happy when the world doesn't want you to be happy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for this week's show. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of The Formula, and big thanks to Brian for taking the time to sit down and chat with us this week. Now, if you think you would like or you would enjoy hearing more podcasts, getting some other forms of information, and blog posts, guides, maybe some ebooks, or free online classes, go ahead and head over to helixacademy.co to sign up for our weekly newsletter. And that's a wrap for this week's show. My name is Trevor Carlson. and I look forward to you tuning in to our show next week.